What's kosher? What's not kosher? So we are in chapter 5. According to the oral tradition, we learned that the intent of the Torah statement, do not partake of a soul together with the meat, is to forbid a limb take off from a living animal. With regard to the limb off from a living animal, it was said to Noah. Exactly. In other words, this is not just for the, laws of kosher are for Jews. Jews have to keep kosher, but Aver min achai, which is the Hebrew term, right? Aver means a limb, min achai, from a living animal, right? In other words, not slaughtering it, but you just, cut off a limb and which doesn't kill it, right? Well, whether you sew back up or not is irrelevant to the fact of what you did, right? It's not about whether you're sewing it back up off the limb. For the flesh that you want. That's what we're talking about, right? So that's also a Noachide law, one of the 7 Noachide laws. It's actually the 7th one. The 6 were actually given to Adam, and the 7th. So it says, but flesh together with the soul, its blood you may not eat. Prohibition against partaking of the limb from a living animal applies to kosher domesticated animals, wild beasts, and the fowl, but not to non-kosher species. Okay. So here we're talking about the law, the way it applies to a Jew. To non-Jew would be all species, because a non-Jew can eat all species. Here, since we're talking about kosher, right, the things that are for the Jew, so therefore, you're not allowed to partake in forbidden species, right? So there's already a prohibition. So you can't partake in it. That itself is a prohibition. So this is not a prohibition upon the prohibition. Um, but a kosher animal, you can partake. Okay. The term aver, translated as a limb, applies both to the limb that has flesh, sinews, and bones, a hand or a foot, or that of an organ that does not have a bone, the tongue, the testicles, the spleen, the kidneys, the heart, and the like. There is, however, one difference. When an organ does not possess a bone, the prohibition against partaking of the limb from the living animal applies whether one cut off the entire organ or only part of it. When, by contrast, a limb, so an organ, even if it doesn't have a bone, right, part of it is a prohibition. When, by contrast, a limb possesses a bone, a person is not liable for violating the prohibition against a limb from a living animal unless he separates it in a complete state with its flesh, sinews, and bones. If, however, he only removes flesh from the living animal, he is liable for the prohibition against partaking of a treif animal, as explained, and not from a living animal. So you're not allowed to do that either, but it's a different prohibition, right? Because now you made this animal not kosher. You made this animal, treif, which by the way we learned yesterday in Shabbos. The word treif, we use it today colloquially to mean anything that's not kosher, but treif means an animal that will not be able to live. No, it's not nothing but sacrifice. That will not be able to live out the year. Okay. So if you're going to take something from that animal, and now what you did, well, you're not going to make it able to live out the year, right? In other words, you didn't kill it. If you killed it, that's called a nevela. That's a different prohibition. Treif means it's alive. right? Here we're talking about you didn't, if you killed the animal, so then we're not talking about you killed the animal. You didn't kill the animal, it's still alive. Okay, because if you killed it, then you made it into an avela, and that's a prohibition itself of, partaking. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So when by contrast a limb possesses a bone, person are liable, okay, until with the sinews. If, however, he only removes the flesh of the living animal, he's liable for prohibition. Okay, we said treifa, right, and not because of the limb of a living animal. Which again, that's for Jews only, because this Jews have the prohibition of eating something treif, meaning an animal that has been um, now made what's the word I'm looking for? Damaged, that they will not be able to live out the year. Okay, if one is liable for lashes only for partaking of an olive-sized portion of the limb from the living animal. Like everything in Torah, it's got a, it's got a minimum size, and that is the olive size portion, which kazayas as it's called, which is like a slice of bread, that size. Even if one eats an entire limb or organ, if it is the size of an olive, one is liable. If not, he's exempt. Exempt means from a punishment, but you're still not allowed to do it, right? Important. If one cut off an olive-sized portion of flesh, sinews, and bones from the limb according to its natural form and ate it, was liable even if it possessed only the smallest amount of meat. Since he did not alter the natural form, one is liable for the bones and the sinews as well. I don't know what it means from its natural form, according to its natural form. Not exactly clear on that. If, however, one separated a limb, which he tore off from a living animal, and detached the flesh from the sinews and the meat, he is not liable for lashes unless he eats the olive-sized portion of the meat alone. The bones and the sinews are not included in the olive portion since he changed the limb's natural form. So remember, it's not about the act itself that you that is the prohibition. The prohibition is that you're taking from it and you're eating from it, you're partaking of it, right? So if you partake of it in its natural form, meaning the flesh with the sinews and the bones, that's when the smallest amount, you'd still be liable. Liable means for lashes, right? Right. If you now detach though the meat from it, from the bone, you didn't eat it with the sinews and the bone together, right? You took the meat off, so then you need the amount of meat, an olive size itself, in order to be liable. Okay, the bones said they're not included because he changed it from its natural state. Now I understand what it meant natural form before, meaning you ate the drumstick like King Henry VIII, right? Like you just tore it off. When one divides the organ and eats bit by bit, he's liable if there's an olive-sized portion of meat and what he ate. If not, he's exempt. Exempt means, again, from lashes, but it's still a prohibition. If he took an olive-sized portion of the limb with flesh, sinews, and bones according to its natural state and ate it, he's liable even though it became divided inside his mouth before he swallows it. Yeah, not clear why that had to be added. Number 5, when a person rips a limb from a living animal and causes it to become treif when doing so, he is doubly liable for partaking of it, right? One's for partaking of a limb from a living animal and one's for partaking of treif. Because not necessarily if you took a limb from an animal, right, are you going to create that it's going to die within the year, right? That you made it unhealthy enough that it's for sure going to die. May not happen, but if it does, so then you're liable 2 times. Let's see. Both of these provisions take the same effect at the same time. Similarly, one rips fat from a living animal, partakes of it, he is doubly liable for partaking of the living animal and partaking of fat, non-kosher fat. We're talking about it. If he rips the fat from the treif animal, he is liable for the violation of 3 negative commandments. From a treif. Why? Because he's making a treif also. Fat, treif, and a limb from a live animal. I think you could get lashes for all because they're all separate prohibitions. I think so. Yeah. 39 times 3. The following rules apply when meat is disjoined from an animal and an organ is hanging from it. Something's wrong with this animal. It's kind of some meat is disjoined from it. Wish there were like kind of examples on these things because I don't know what does it mean exactly? Yeah. If it's impossible for the meat, again, well, if it's impossible for the meat again to become the living part of the body, it is forbidden. But one is not liable for lashes for it. You're not allowed to because it's part of the animal, but it's extra. It's not like it's not like part of the living. It's not part of the living animal in the sense that it's disjointed and it will never be regenerated. This piece of the animal. Okay. Yeah. We need to be farmers and know these things. I don't know, you need to know animals and to know them well. And so I don't know, there must be some kind of an example of that happens to animals. Right.
Yeah, it happens. So
Oh,
you get to
okay.
see it.
Okay. So it's forbidden because it's still part of the animal, but it's not going to be regenerated. So therefore, you're not going to get lashes because it's not really a limb from a live animal in the sense that there's its life it's not part of its life, so to speak. So it applies even though it was not separated from the animal until after it was slaughtered. If the animal dies, we consider a limb as if it fell off the animal when it was alive. Therefore, one receives lashes for partaking of it, because prohibition against partaking of a limb from a living animal. Wow, interesting. So here it works on the other end of it. You slaughtered this animal, right? And now you took this flesh that was kind of hanging, right? Now that's part of the limb of the animal. And it's still considered part of the living animal, even though it was slaughtered, because that's what it was. It was not, when you slaughtered, that part was not part of it. And yet part of it. I don't know if I don't think I've. But why would you get lashes if in the other instance you wouldn't get lashes? If, however, the limb could have up. That's all in the instance that it could not be regenerated, right? So therefore, it's not really alive, or not part of the animal, so to speak, of the life of the animal.
You want any particular number right now?
Yeah, number 6. You could read with me, so you then. Therefore, one receives obviously partaking, but because of prohibition against partaking of the limb of the living animal. If, however, the limb could again become a living part of the body, the animal is ritually slaughtered, it is permitted. Because we look at it as if it was regenerated, even though it wasn't. And therefore, it's permitted. Considered part of the animal. Okay. Number 7. If one pulled an organ from its natural position, crushed it, ground it, one crushed testicles, or pulled them from their place, and then slaughtered the animal, the organ is not forbidden according to scriptural law. The rationale is that it possesses a trace of life, as evidence from the fact that it did not decay. Nevertheless, it's forbidden to partake of it as a result of the custom following the entire Jewish people from previous generations, for it resembles a limb separating from the living animal. So the testicles were crushed, they were removed in some manner, then you slaughtered it. Right? So it's not forbidden because it still had a trace of life in it. It did not decay. That's the proof. But you shouldn't do this. It's forbidden because it resembles separating the limb from the living animal. Even though you didn't. You're not allowed to do that. Yes, that's rabbinic law. The following laws apply when animals' bones were broken. If the flesh or the skin covers, second. So sometimes broken bones will make the animal trafe, right? Because it won't live out the year. Here the Rambam is speaking about instances where the broken bones does not cause the animal to become trafe. So it's only about the broken limb, right? So may the meat from the limb be eaten or not? That's the question, right?
How about cow or beef?
Yeah.
Not birds.
Yeah. If the flesh of the skin covers the majority of the thickness of the broken bone, the majority of the circumference of the fracture, it is permitted. If the bone emerged outside of the skin, the limb is forbidden. When the animal, and again, it's not a cause for death, for premature death. When the animal or the fowl is slaughtered, one should cut off the limb and place at the place where it is broken and discard it. The remainder of the limb is permitted. We rule that the limb is forbidden until the flesh is healed in all of the following situations: a broken bone, the flesh covers the bone, but that flesh was crushed or decayed like flesh, which a doctor would remove. It is scattered in many different places. There are many perforations within the flesh. The flesh was cracked or pierced like a ring. The flesh was rubbed off from above until a thin peel remained, or the flesh decayed from below around the broken bone to the extent that the flesh surrounding the bone does not touch it. The person partook of the limb in any of these circumstances is liable for stripes of rebellious conduct, because even though this is not biblical, but it's rabbinic, and therefore that's why stripes of rebellious conduct is a rabbinic law. When a person inserts his hand in the inside of an animal, cuts off his spleen, one of his kidneys, or the like, but leaves the severed organ inside the animal and then slaughters it, as the piece cut off are forbidden as organs from a living animal, although they remain within the animal's womb. If I were to be cut off a portion of the fetus, again, important that this is that you didn't make the animal trafe. You can live with one kidney, can live without a spleen, right? But you left that organ inside. If you took it outside the organ, then it's for sure a limb from a live animal, right? What happens? You left it inside. Now, like, who's doing it? It's not a big question of who's doing such a thing. It's giving us the parameter of the law, right? It sounds a little crazy. Like, you did that and then you slaughtered the animal. And why would you do that? The point of it is that you severed an organ that didn't make a trafe, right? Because the animal could live out that year, right? But you left it inside the animal. Now you slaughtered it. So how do you look at that? How do you look at that limb, or how do you look at that that organ, right? That organ, of course, it didn't make a trafe. That's it. Remember that, right? So no, that organ is forbidden because it remained within the animal. So therefore, it's like a limb from a live animal. If, however, you cut away a portion of the fetus within the womb, so I understand this with the womb. Is this about the fetus inside that you took? I'm a little confused.
Sure.
If, however, you cut away a portion of the fetus within the womb, but not remove it, and then slaughter the animal, the mother, pieces of limbs of the fetus are permitted because they do not emerge outside of the mother. Okay. The first part was not about a fetus. There's another interesting law that if you slaughter a mother with her fetus, the fetus does not need to be slaughtered. It's kosher because you slaughtered the mother. So that's what he's saying over here. Here, if you cut away a portion of that fetus within the womb, right? It's considered, the fetus is considered like a limb of the mother. It's not considered as a living entity, right? So since it's just like a limb from the mother, therefore, and you slaughtered the mother, so now the fetus is permitted. That's as long as it didn't emerge outside of the mother. The moment it emerges, part of it outside the mother, then it's considered as a viable entity. By the way, a similar thing is with a child that a mother carries, right? We consider it to be a part of the mother. We don't consider it to be a life, a complete life. You're not allowed to abort. You're not allowed to abort unless, we've learned this in the JLI course, only if the fetus is destroying the mother, right? Then it's got the law of a rodif, right? A pursuer. It's trying to kill the mother. So that's then the law of abortion applies, right? No, wait, let's just stick to the point. Okay. So otherwise, the fetus is considered like a limb of the mother. And therefore, if we learn this in Torah, if two men are fighting and they hit the woman accidentally and the fetus is aborted, they don't get a death penalty if they willfully did it or whatever. They wouldn't get the death. There's no liability for why? Because it's not considered as an entity of life. It's a potential of life. You're not allowed to abort it. It's a prohibition, right? So the same thing is over here. It's considered like a part of the mother, right? That's as long as it doesn't emerge. The same thing is with the fetus. If it emerges, then it's considered life.
That contemporary?
Mm-hmm. When a fetus sticks her foreleg or hind leg out of the womb, the limb is forbidden forever, whether one cuts off the limb before it slaughters the mother's or afterwards. If it returns the limb to the womb of the mother, and afterwards the mother was slaughtered, or the fetus was born and lived for several years, the limb is forbidden as treif. The rationale is the meat, all meat that emerged from the natural position is forbidden as flesh that it was separated from a living animal. Because it did separate, so yeah. This is derived from the phrase, meat from an animal that was mortally wounded, treif, in the field. Our rabbis extrapolated that meat comes out of a place that that is like a field for it. It becomes treif, as we've explained. And that was yesterday. And it's a field, meaning not its natural place. Okay. Okay, here I'm going to have to stop. A reminder, please come and join us later, 6:30. Actually, yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you,
God
guys.
bless.
Good day all.
Have a great day.